subject today. Can anybody remind me what the subject is?
Self-deprecation is the words you wrote from memory.
Self-deprecation. My goodness. Well, I always forget stuff. I can't remember stuff. In fact, where are my glasses? Somebody help me find my glasses. Can anybody know where my glasses are?
Norma, hit him on the head.
Oh, Norma's a remote viewer.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I'm thinking they're sort of high.
Oh, where? Where? Oh, here. Oh, okay.
Was that? I thought you were joking.
Yeah. Well, I always forget where my glasses are. I can't remember anything. In fact, it's amazing that I showed up on time and that I got all this stuff together here, because I screw up so badly, you know, and I'll probably screw up this whole event. I mean, I interrupt people and don't let them talk long enough, and I mean, I really don't know what I'm doing here.
I'm glad you admit that.
Good subject.
Somebody else could do this much better than I can, and that's kind of an example of what we're here to talk about.
It's one version of it. Good example.
One version, yeah. Beware the insipid apology. It came to my attention that this is an issue for some people. There are people that we know that are archetypical in this behavior. A little bit of background, something that helped me to understand this is that I've studied off and on for a number of years a cosmology that includes, among other things, several negative features that a person experiences or actually manifests.
Yeah.
They are, off the top of my head, they're kind of like the 7 deadly sins. One is greed, one is arrogance, one is martyrdom, one is impatience, and one is self-destruction, and another is self-deprecation. Does that cover 7? Did I hit 7 there?
You missed my favorite one, lust.
Well, lust is kind of like appetite. It's only it's only a problem when it manifests inappropriately, like wanting money is. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but if you behave in such a way that you feel panicked, if you feel panicked about not enough money, even when you have more money than anybody else, then it's crazy. It's
right.
Inappropriate. Then we call that greed. Okay, so that is definitely one of the 7. They're all interesting, and you could do a 2-day seminar on each one.
2-day seminar, my God.
Oh yes. My own personal tennis net that I have had to overcome in my life, and it's been there all my life.
Your what?
All my life.
No, your what? Tennis net?
Yeah, yes, like a tennis. It's the barrier. Each one of these negative features is the person's barrier to fulfilling what they've come here to fulfill. We talked about purpose last time we met, and the purpose. Well, there's a difference between purpose and goal, and we didn't really cover that sufficiently last time. But there is a striving, and if you accomplish this and you attend to what you came here to do, your life is successful. Okay. If it's not happening, chances are the thing that's getting in the way is your negative purpose.
Or the negation of your purpose.
Not necessarily negation of purpose, but something that makes you behave in such a way that you just screw up your opportunities. I'm an expert at impatience. Everything that I've ever failed at or failed to achieve has come because of anxiety about running out of time, being infuriated by people wasting my time. One of them was stubbornness. That's the one that I left out. And the reason I remembered it now is that stubborn people are infuriating to somebody who's impatient, because the person who's impatient is terrified of running out of time, because there's a belief there that you can't create time. You only have so much of it. And you're refusing to take my suggestions, and you're refusing to look at this, and you're refusing to try new experiences, and you're wasting my time, and I can't stand it anymore. And my behavior shows it. Okay, so that's really offensive to somebody who is naturally stubborn, because their deep motivation is fear of change. The impatience's motivation is fear of running out of time. By the way, greed's motivation is the fear of running out of stuff. It's a belief that even as beings, they can't create stuff. And there's only so much stuff to go around. And I got to get enough stuff. And if you're taking my stuff or blocking me from getting my stuff, I don't like that. You see? So that's that's how that's the mechanism of how these things work. They are basically recognizable behaviors, usually unpleasant behaviors, and there's a qualification to that. But they're behaviors that are discreditable or annoying to people. And those behaviors cause a person to fail at what they're trying to do. I can give a lot more examples with impatience. You have a court date. You have to show up at the right time. So instead of leaving early enough, getting dressed, refusing to take calls immediately before you walk out of the house, you wait till the last minute because you had more important things to do. So you're barely dressed, and as you're walking out of the house, a phone call comes. You're afraid of missing out on something, so you take the phone call, and that makes you a little bit late, and you figure you can catch up if you just drive a little faster. And you go out and you drive, and you drive basically too fast, and a policeman stops you, and even if he just issues you a warning, it takes him 15 minutes putzing around in his car with your driver's license to let you go. Now you're 15 minutes late for the court date, and you may well have lost the whole case because you weren't there. This is typical for somebody who is impatient. Okay, now somebody who is I want to see. Okay, I see. Somebody who is who is in self-deprecation, it's a little bit harder to see what they're doing. it's not so annoying. People who are in self-deprecation tend to be somewhat submissive. And a lot of people find that pleasant because they're not threatening. And they put up with it. And it can masquerade as humility, humbleness. And so some people are even admired for it. Children are trained to apologize constantly. And at a certain point, children in this situation might get the idea that if they can apologize for something before it's pointed out and they're criticized for it, they've kind of preempted this criticism. They've preempted this attack. So if I apologize for being late to dinner, knowing that my father will yell at me for being late for dinner, I can put him in a situation where I could say, well, I just apologized for that. You see, and he might let it go instead of making a big scene of it. Do you understand how the self-deprecation works? Do you understand what the word deprecation means? Give me a moment.
Well, it's part of low self-esteem.
Yes, it. Give me a second here. I'm turning some people on that were turned off. Unmute. Yeah, it is a low self-esteem thing. But it's an affected low self-esteem. It's like you wear your low self-esteem like a banner. You walk into the room saying, look at me, I have low self-esteem. Be careful, don't hurt my feelings, because I have such low self-esteem. And, you know, if you find something wrong with me, you're not going to tell me anything that I don't already know. And I'll apologize for it right here. I drank all my juice. Anyhow,
I'm gonna go get some juice.
get some for me too.
We're defining the word deprecation.
Yeah, self-deprecation.
I got it here on dictionary.com.
Yes, please.
On what?
It says to deprecate is to express disapproval or to deplore, to belittle or deprecate, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in the synonyms down the bottom, the act of expressing disapproval, especially of yourself, and to disparagement, denigration, and all that sort of stuff.
Perfect. Perfect. And there is an archetypical person who is chronically manifesting self-deprecation.
Mm-hmm.
Hank, who is one person that's well known that you would say is a good example of self-deprecation?
Okay. Well, nobody who is truly in self-deprecation
How about Leonard Cohen?
really achieves anything.
How about Leonard Cohen?
There are certain comics that use it as a shtick. Rodney Dangerfield.
Roger Dangerfield.
Rodney Dangerfield.
Yeah.
But that's. I want to get back to the point that I'm making here. I said there are people who are in self-deprecation,
Right.
and they're obviously so. They don't look at you right in the eye, typically, or they might force themselves to, but their inclination is to back off and be very meek. They very seldom express an opinion, especially if they haven't been asked. Even when they have been asked, they'll generally apologize for it before they give it. You know, I'm probably being stupid here, but you know, I went to that restaurant and I actually liked it, but people, people don't usually agree with me about that stuff, and I'm not very good at judging restaurants. So they'll uh, they'll give a reason why you may not want to believe them. This is very difficult. It blocks them from certain things. I mean, a person like that could not be a physician. A person like that could not be a fine craftsman, because they would present themselves so badly that a person would have to be crazy to trust them with a violin or a valuable instrument. A lot of women are trained to be like this by domineering parents. Whether they lock into it full, at a full force, that's different. When they do lock into it in full force, they tend to they mumble, they giggle compulsively. They act like embarrassed little girls. And like I said, in some environments, that is actually considered a desirable behavior for women. It's to the point where it's even affected. And you can imagine a lot of Chinese girls or Japanese girls, when you watch them together, when they laugh, they have to cover their mouth. They wouldn't dream of doing something outrageous. And of course, what's the one thing that the Japanese are famous for saying a lot?
So sorry.
That's it. So exactly. So even if they're not intrinsically in that mode, they affect that mode in order to be socially acceptable. Now, I think we know somebody. Norma and I have a close friend who's, I think, solidly in that mode, but she can pull out of it. She can pull out of it for moments, and she can look you right in the eye. And if she feels safe enough, she can come up with very interesting originations. But I mean, she's basically shy and reclusive, and everything that she accomplishes in her life is really an effort to break through this, and you have to admire her for it. But if you see her at a party where she doesn't know anybody, you will see that she is typically, kind of hunched over, not really wanting to look at people or send out a lot of energy to them. You see, but there are other people that aren't so much into this, who experience it and who deal with it. And we all have it to some extent. To some extent. Each of us has enough of each of these chief negative features that we can understand it, we can empathize with someone who does. I know that, I mean, I grew up basically afraid to express myself. Or I had good reason to be afraid to express myself. My parents were very disapproving. Never had a single compliment as a child. Hard to believe. I didn't realize that until I was in my 20s, that there was something wrong with that. Something severely pathological with that. And of course, my own explanation for it was, I'm not worthy. I am a rotten kid. What did we ever do to deserve such a rotten kid? Well, that was always a rhetorical question because nobody's ready to listen to an answer to it. But this is what I had to break through to get to where I can engage with anybody. And so I worked at it and I got through it. And most people wouldn't think of me as
Reticent.
reticent, or self-effacing, or self-disparaging. But there are moments when I'm in a group, maybe a meeting where something occurs to me, and instead of just standing up and saying it, I hold back, and I'm thinking maybe somebody else will say it. When I catch myself doing that, I stand up and talk, even if I have nothing to say, because I hate that part of myself. It's useless. It's useless. Another example was at the Marin Peace and Justice Association in Marin County. This guy came by, there was a big meeting, this guy who had done research on how to break into voting machines and how it's done. And it was a very, very good presentation, very convincing. And people stood up to talk. And, a number of people stood up to talk. And I was kind of disgusted with the whole thing. And I had this dialogue going in my head, what I'd want to say. I didn't want to stand in the line. And I basically, I didn't want to put myself up there for people to disapprove of. And I drove, I got in the, left, got in the car, drove home, started driving home. And I realized about halfway home what I had done. I turned around and I parked and went in, stood in that line. And I said shit that no one else would say. And it had an impact. I created an impact. But my first inclination was to just sneak out of there like a mouse. And this is self-deprecation. And I think that when a person has that in their repertoire of behaviors, it keeps them from meeting people. It keeps them from having an effect. It'll keep them out of politics completely. It may even prevent them from supporting other people that they would like to support. So anyhow, that is my personal experience with this, and I thought that it was important enough to bring it up. I have not seen this discussed in our big S backgrounds, and the reason for that, I think, I have a little theory for that, is that the old man did not like people around him who were uppity, did not like people around him that could possibly defy him. If they were not able to stand up in front of a crowd like he could, he despised them and he'd express derision. But if they manifested this, he would attack them. And so he created an environment there where it was much safer to be a spectator. And there were some exceptions, and those exceptions were always in big trouble. I mean, I knew some of them very well. Bill Deitch, Bob Harvey, a number of people. John McMasters. So anyhow.
Did you meet John McMaster?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So anyhow, I just wanted to open the floor, see if anybody else has any comments or recognitions or suggestions or
Well, Hank, would you like to get rid of the self-deprecation?
Get rid of it?
Yes.
Would I like to get rid of it? I always like to get rid of it. You mean in myself or in other people?
In yourself and for others.
No, I'm one. I have trouble finding traces of it anymore. Really, if it's there, it's it's subtle, but you know it's there. It's like the impatience.
Yeah.
Most
Well,
people would not think of me as impatient.
yeah, we actually have a rundown called, it's called the Clean Slate Rundown. But what it does is it addresses the thoughts, beliefs, and the precepts that we operate on. And operating on the basis that you think that you're not worthy enough, or, you know, that's a basic kind of proposition that could be behind that kind of condition. There's a lot of ways it could be expressed. But for example, thinking you're not good enough, not worthy enough, or any of that bullshit, it's really only a belief, and they can be undone with our Clean Slate rundown.
Good.
And you can do it solo.
Mm-hmm.
It's simple, and you get rid of all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate your.
So send me the rundown, Roger.
Appreciate you promoting that. And what would a person want to do if they wanted to avail themselves of this technology?
Well, send me an email address, and so I can forward it to you, or you can get onto the forum where the guys discuss it and deal with it. It's on my Knowledgeism forum, and Alan worked on it. I've worked on it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you download it and run it. You don't need me, just run it solo.
Oh, well, good. Thank you.
You guys can team up and co-process it. Norma, have you done any auditing or processing?
Yeah, I've
Well, then you can run it on Hank if you want a nice, shining new man in your life. He'll become a shining power. Be careful.
Bob Ross's rundown procedure is great for that too.
Who's rundown?
Bob Ross's logical procedure rundown.
Yeah.
Yeah, please. I'll send you my email and you can send it.
Yeah, but basically, it's real simple. You just locate it and then begin to run out, you know, its existence in your universe. Because what happens with these, what we call precepts or belief systems, they actually act as false perceptions, and they totally misdirect all of your efforts in life. They misdirect your where you direct your attention or spiritual life force and power.
Good. Okay, now we can move on. A couple of things. One is, Roger, in your methodology, is there any is there any distinction made between self-deprecation and arrogance?
Well, arrogance could be viewed as an attitude, and I created an attitude handling.
No, I mean specifically as I mean.
It's a separate thing.
Hmm?
It's a separate thing. It's a dominating attitude. Arrogance is an attitude of cause and domination.
And what is the purpose of it?
To make others wrong and make self right, and to prevent oneself from being made effective others.
Yeah, yeah. And the underlying fear is what?
It's whatever it is for the individual. I mean, I don't get too bloody intellectual and think about these things, Hank. I get in and get rid of them.
Well, that's good. Sometimes you have to, if you can simplify it, like find a one-word definition. This is very powerful.
Yeah.
Because you can look at another person who's manifesting a behavior, And instead of seeing it as an obnoxious behavior, which it may well be, especially arrogance, you can ask yourself a question. You're actually kind of running it on them and with yourself as a surrogate. What is he afraid of? Well, with arrogance,
You're right either.
with arrogance, the fear is vulnerability.
Maybe.
Well, that covers almost everything. And the way that the mechanism works, why is he arrogant? I mean, the person who's in self-deprecation is also afraid of being vulnerable, but the solution to the problem from a person who is in arrogance or using arrogance is to get the other person get them off balance, get them on their back foot, and hopefully, if they have some kind of self-deprecation going, get that fired up. So if I'm afraid of what you're going to say to me, I'm afraid you're going to embarrass me or expose me, I try to find something that is wrong with you that you yourself would agree is wrong with you. And I bring this up. And I try to get you to start defending yourself with it. And that is the mechanism of arrogance. By the way, if you see this as the main feature of a certain personality, you can understand a lot of their decisions and their policies and their relationships. I'm thinking of one person in general that we all know. You know who that is,
Yep.
right?
T.
Starts with what?
Starts with a T.
Oh, yeah. Oh God, he's a fucking psychopath. No, I was thinking of, I was actually thinking of Hubbard. You know, an amazingly gifted and talented person that had a penchant for getting people to follow him. He had this as he was drawn to this need even before he got involved with enlightenment. But he would always try to dominate. And he would dominate in such a way that he had to be assured that the person around him or the people around him were not threats. But it was inordinate. I mean, nobody wants to have people around them who are threatening them. But what made it crazy was the fact that he was, in fact, as powerful personally as he was. But he kept trying to establish the safety for himself and establish safety for himself. And he could not really tolerate people with his speaking ability. He couldn't tolerate people who could fill up an auditorium, although he was always trying to find them and he was always encouraging it. When he found that, he would attack them. The other thing about arrogance is people who are in this pattern are very vulnerable to flattery. And he could be very much manipulated by flattery. So this kind of shows why, even though he had followers who were extremely talented, they generally never rose up in the organization. And if they did, they would get shot down immediately. They would be attacked, like John McMaster's. I mean, all the names I can think of, entertainers. So anyhow, what we're talking about is the self-deprecation, which is a different scenario. And yes, you may feel that you have a shotgun approach that'll handle all of these things. But I think that there's value in spotting the distinction. Somebody said that sanity is the ability to distinguish identities and similarities, and there are some similarities and differences, and there are differences. I don't have, although I'm very interested in this protocol that you're talking about, Roger, I don't have, for my 50 plus years in doing this stuff, a confidence in any one protocol for handling everything.
Yeah, well, I'm not talking about everything. I'm talking about you personally, or me personally, or any individual who recognizes that he's self-invalidating, and you can handle that individual's problem of self-invalidation with the rundown. It's pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't complicated, you know, it's like straightforward.
Yeah, well, if that works, that's great. And you've given us that, and we'll check it out and get back to you on it.
Yeah, give me a report.
Yeah, for sure. It is a lot of the value in studying this stuff for me at my point in life has not been to fix stuff in myself that need to be fixed. Fix. And
That's
now
what it's
I'm
like,
77 years old, I'm still fixing. Where's this going to go? Well, if I fix enough, I'll go to nirvana. Fuck that shit. I don't think I'm going to go to nirvana.
All right.
And my next lifetime, I'm not going to have some of these problems. I'll have other problems because I'm bored with these problems. A part of the teaching of this stuff is that these things do not come from traumatic experiences. The negative features do not come from duress. The person is born with them. It's like they choose them between lives. They choose them as chosen obstacles to be able to overcome them. You get to a certain point where, you know, for myself, my main thing is certainly not self-deprecation, although there are elements of it. It's been impatience. Most people who know me think of me as extremely patient. The difficulties that I have with impatience are no longer that I'm trying to rush people. I'm trying to speed up processes that shouldn't be sped up. I'm not trying to rush clients when I have them in session. I don't have many manifestations of impatience. I do, but where they affect me is timing. Sometimes I overcompensate for my known impatience by letting something go on too long. Lousy timing. You see, so that's a kind of a subtle version of it. Self-deprecation, the part of it that I'm very interested in is the part of it where the person is not wallowing in it. And most people who look at them would see them as rather confident and accomplished. They may have excellent communication skills. They may be able to support themselves economically very well. They may be doing very well on the second dynamic, you know, keeping a family together. But they themselves, note here, they themselves Where they really need work is seeing what's going on with other people. Now, that's what I'm particularly motivated by. I mean, I would be interested in a rundown, the end phenomenon of which would be the understanding of other people. I'm intensely interested in this. This is my big motivation. And you know, it's actually possible to be relatively screwed up yourself and still know so well what's going on for another person, to be able to empathize so well that you can be a great healer without trying. And for me, this is a great end phenomenon. What do you think about that, Tom?
I'd like to have that too. Sounds good to me.
How does that sound as a goal for anyone else, for David?
Yeah.
I don't know. I see people, when I see a person, I see a product, and I see, well, that's just exactly the way they were made, they're brought up. I mean, we're all only as good as being bred and brought up. You know, we're products, and when I see you know, good points and bad points and defects in a person, I see, well, yeah, there's something in their upbringing that caused that. I mean, and there's not one of those things that I can't run out, I can't process.
Well, this is granting beingness, right? To allow them to be as they have been made.
Yeah.
But for them to decide to change that picture themselves.
Oh, you can't. I don't even go there. I mean, if they're reaching and they're interested, yeah, I'll help them. But I don't go push it on them. No, that's very bad to do.
Well, you know, we see things from our own experience, from our own perspective. And I mean, some people go to healers. Some people just go to people that just touch them and are able to, as is, negative energy and create healing. And that's who they go to. They don't want a bunch of stuff. They don't want to run sessions of things that happened in the past with a narrative. They don't want to think about that. They don't want it. It's not what they want. They find somebody who has the ability to put their hands behind this person's head and just give them relief and take away the anguish. And you can do this yourself as an experiment. There are people that do this, and this is what they do. This is their profession. I don't go to people like that. This is not my experience. I tend, maybe because I'm intellectually centered, I tend to look for solutions or ways out through my own intellect, which is not necessarily the most versatile way to do it. But most of the changes that have happened to me in my life came from realizing things, from realizations, and not from looking at past incidents, stuff that happened in the past, traumas, engrams, secondaries. Of course, I've had a lot of those, and I run them on people, and I have gained understanding from it. But to me, the value is in the understanding you gain, not from the energy that you remove. That's for me. So I try to make this stuff available for people, partly because in my humble opinion, it's the fastest and most painless way to achieve change or an elevation of my own or one's own abilities, a step toward enlightenment. I have never seen somebody that I considered particularly enlightened who had dedicated their lives to running out traumas. I haven't seen it. I
That's
know.
pretty right, actually. You know why? It's a bottomless pit. But the other side, the other side of the coin, Hank, is if one can articulate what are the positive ideals
Mm-hmm.
and work on enhancing and empowering them for oneself, now you're on a winning proposition.
Yes, exactly
I
so.
actually wrote a piece on my forum on that exact point just last week.
On
We're processing the positive because
can you give us a link to it?
yeah, you'll find it. It's the most recent. You go in there when you get to the forum. You just paddle around. You'll find it. It was actually in the last week I posted it.
Is this the same forum that Tom posted the link to?
Yep.
Okay, sure. We'll take a look at that.
You'll need to register in, and I've got your email, so I'll recognize you when you come in. In order to stop all the Russian bots dumping shit on our site, you have to sort of use the thing and say, "Hello, Roger. It's Tom. It's me," and and I'll say, "Good, you're on," because we don't let bots on the site.
Oh, okay.
Nobody argues there. If they argue, they get thrown off.
Mm-hmm.
We're into guys using the material and winning with it.
Yeah.
But no, I actually wrote on that. The point is that most people have no idea of what are the positives, attributes that they spiritually actually are endowed with, which can be and should be empowered and enhanced and optimized. It's a missing technology. Hubbard never had it.
Yeah.
Hubbard was a bottomless pit of get rid of. Seriously.
Yeah, you're right there. The way I look at it, Roger, is that there was so much work to developing the tech that he did. There wasn't enough time in a lifetime to do it all. I mean, it had to take somebody else to take off from where he left off to do it.
I did a lecture, The Free Zone, in Pasadena in '59, and the title of it was basically what happened in 1962-63 when the tech went negative. Up till then, Hubbard's tech was processing mainly the positive, even though Dynetics was, the Scientology literally addressed the positive, and he was doing own goals listing, and I did all that shit in 62 and 63. And then in April 63, he announced that he'd been to heaven and that all of our own goals were not our own goals, but were implants. And from that moment on, the tech went south.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually what happened. It's all in the red volumes. And so people, all the tech from 63 was get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
And even the OT levels, get rid of your BTs. That's all bullshit. Why not enhance your spiritual relationships and empower them and make them very loving and beneficial?
And what do you think of the creative processing?
Well, they were very good. The only trouble was when they were invented, we did not know about ending the process when you got the end phenomenon. So most of that shit was overrun.
Oh.
And the idea that we're overrunning clients or pre-clears was not recognized until 63, 65 actually. Ross Turnbull out in Melbourne. And so Hubbard actually got a guy here in America who, I've forgotten his name now. But anyway, he worked out a sort of a grade chart. Yeah. So in the early days, we overran everything.
What do you suppose that was?
Why? Because because we had not recognized that for every process there is an ideal end phenomenon attainment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for example, take one of the old CCH processes. You run it until the guy is right here, right now, and aware of it, and he's spiritually centered and aware of who he is, where he is, and what he is.
Yeah.
You don't try and run it past that point. What you would do is honor it, validate, and say, well done, and do a little what we now call as a win celebration rundown, which cleans it up so you don't then do a crash and burn. But by validating the fact you attained the state of being, which is a new state of being recovered, it tends to stabilize it, and you don't unwittingly invalidate it by not recognizing that you've got it.
Yeah. So
You know, running past the end phenomenon tends to invalidate its attainment.
yeah.
And then you get all messy, you get all bitchy, you get all upset, and it's down the tubes from there on. And so that's what happened in the early years.
This point of overrun is so important. I've actually thought of having that as a topic for one of these discussions.
Yeah,
Did you know Barry Fairburn?
yeah.
Yeah.
He tried to take over my introductory lectures in London when I was doing it all in London.
And what happened?
Well, the whole place blew up. London went south. Became crazy.
That's too bad.
Barry's a good guy.
The reason I mentioned Barry is that I learned an awful lot about overrun from a presentation that he did at Sarge Gaboti's. And I was so excited about what he did that I had him come and do the same presentation in Castro Valley, where I was living at the time. Basically, he pointed out that he learned about overrun being a croupier in a gambling casino.
Yeah.
And he had a theory that he would implement, that when a person walks into a casino, they have a goal for what they're going to achieve, what they're going to win.
Right.
And some people can be formidable until they lose that goal, and the house will take out the dealer and put in a dealer that's magic, and
Right.
he was one of those dealers that they would put in when a person was on a crazy roll, and they were afraid the guy was going to walk away with the casino. And he realized that whoever walks in the door has a goal. When they've achieved that goal, if they try to keep going, they will start losing.
Yeah.
And he would try to figure out what that goal was and where it was and get them to it as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And this was the metaphor for overrun. And anyhow, there was something else about this that I think I lost my thought here. But
that's the most significant thing I learned in all these lectures so far.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, well, I was excited about it too.
I run with the gambling part.
Yeah, the gambling part.
Well, there is something about the gambling part. I was written up in the New York Times here with my old partner as Agent 007 for the businessman abroad. So we're in the security game and getting information game. So I had this client that came across from Germany in about 1972, and London at the time, there was casinos everywhere. And so he wanted to go gambling, and he had a system, this German guy, and he was winning with it. And I'm standing by just observing. And then as he started to win and win and win, the casino boss came in and switched croupiers on him.
Mm-hmm.
And the croupier that they put in was a guy that could actually defeat the system that this gambler was using, which was actually playing a third of the board or something. And this croupier was so skilled he could actually make sure that the ball went into, you know, certain areas of the roulette wheel.
Wow.
They're that bloody skilled.
Yeah.
So my sweetheart is inviting me to the dinner that she's been cooking.
I said one before you run off.
Yeah.
One more point about why these overruns were occurring. Some of those processes were such that a person could achieve a significant phenomenon in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And some people running the same process, it would take them a day and a half of processing in order to affect a significant change.
Yeah.
Now, I myself, you know, I had to redo the drug rundown. I became completely bogged. And one of the things that I was told to do was this drug rundown with my friend Lloyd Greenberg, whom you might have known.
Right. Yeah.
And he was a wonderful, compassionate practitioner. But he was doing CCH, what do you call, you know, control drills, CCHs, giving me that hand. And he was supposed to do that to a significant win, I guess. So I sat down, I did this for about 5 minutes, and I realized I'm in present time. I'm me, I'm here.
I'm giving you my hand.
Yeah. I can do this forever. What next? And he did not see, I didn't vocalize anything. And he went on for like 4 or 5 days with this shit. And it was a horrific overrun.
Yeah. Painful. It can actually get very painful.
Yeah. And so sometimes people achieve an overrun. A person sits down, and really, at the moment they sit down, they're so close to the end phenomenon that you just have to run a couple of things. I mean, I've gone release just reading the instructions.
Yeah.
Usually, how I do go release, so I'm no fun at all.
Well, so, there's no money in processing you, mate. You're so bloody fast. You know.
Yeah.
The best clients are those slow ones. You know. You need 100 hours to sort of make any dent in them. Whoa,
yeah.
Money in that.
Well, I did end up with this confidence that just knowing the facts, knowing the definitions, having an understanding of the mechanism, like a mechanism, like how does an airfoil work, or how does a fear work, or how does you know, what solution do you have for this problem? Just having an understanding like this, to me, is the surest way to move up.
Yep.
And it may not be for other people.
Well, literacy, as in understanding of what the hell this is all about, or the game of life is about, any literacy on the subject of our powers or spirituality or relationships is important. And without it, you'll crash and burn.
Yeah.
So because the point is, you can process forever and recover all kinds of wonderful abilities, but unless you understand them and understand how to relate to and with the ability and other people, then life's going to be a mess. So I need to go cater to my spouse here.
Thank you for your participation.
You're welcome, mate. See you next time around.
Bon appetit.
Yes.
And if you have any suggestions for me, please email. I try to use Facebook, but I've almost given up trying to make it functional. I'm doing all the right things, but I don't get people writing on Facebook. But I like emails. So send me an email. Let me know what you think.
About what? Anything?
About anything.
Okay. Next time, Hank.
Okay.
See you guys.
Okay, Roger.
See you, Roger.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Norm.
Yeah. Well, does anyone else here have something to add on the subject of self-deprecation? Has anyone had a cognition about how it affects their own life?
Well, I saw myself in there a few times. You know, low self-esteem, not participating mainly was when I was realized, like at work or something, I'm with a group and they're all talking, giving their ideas, and find myself not participating. I said, well, mine's not as important, so I don't do it. And I kind of realized that.
Yeah.
So, work on it now, though.
By the way, something I should have said before Roger left. There's a guy that I've known, an acquaintance, who wrote a wonderful book about these negative features, and his name is Jose Stevens. Oh, you have it.
Yeah, I have that one.
You see this, David?
Yeah.
Yeah, Norma has a couple of them. This one's hers. And Perry Shepard. Perry Shepard just showed up.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Perry.
I'm doing good. Sorry I'm late.
Oh, well, we're just winding down here. And the subject was self-deprecation. Your camera's pointing at the top of your head. It's an interesting painting behind you. Oh, much better. Hey, Perry. This is a book that an acquaintance of mine wrote a number of years ago, who uses the same concepts, which are these negative features. And on page 105, he talks about the self-deprecation dragon. And it's actually quite an interesting chapter, and goes into things much further than we were able to today. But there's a point that he makes that I just wanted to call your attention to. The self-deprecation behavior, part of that is to go into arrogance, which is a different chief negative feature. Arrogance protects the person by keeping them from being vulnerable, by putting potential opponents off balance. So if I attack you, then your energy is going into defending yourself instead of picking me apart, right? Of course, the other way to do that is to criticize myself, deprecate myself so much that whatever you find wrong with me, I've already apologized for it. So there's no way you can hurt me, okay? So people who are doing this, there's a lot of shuffling there, Tom. Is that you?
Sorry, I was looking through the book.
Okay, yeah. The idea is a person who is typically self-effacing can at times become arrogant. They'll slide into the arrogance and disparage other people. Like they may have backed off from contributing or participating in a group, and they'll say, well, these guys are bullshit anyhow. You know, these guys don't know what they're talking about, so I may as well not have participated. This is what I mean by sliding into arrogance. You see how that works? Do you see that, David?
I dozed off for a bit. I didn't hear what you said.
Stuff is a little heavy.
About the last minute, I conked out.
Oh, really?
What did you say?
Okay.
That was 5 minutes.
Well, do you know what self-deprecation means, right?
Sure. Oh, sure, I do. Yeah.
You understand how it works.
Yes.
If
Yeah.
I apologize
Oh yeah.
enough for my shortcomings, you can't find anything wrong with me.
Yeah,
So
I went through a stage of that many years ago. I corrected that. I think that was even before I got into Scientology. I corrected that.
good. Well, sometimes what people do once they've done that, say you've got a group, and you know, if I was a little bit more outgoing and didn't have self-esteem issues, I would participate in your group, but I start out by apologizing for my inability, and I've got this internal voice that tells me, you know, you're so stupid and dumb. You know, why don't you just keep your mouth shut? And my brother sent me a message the other day when I talked about what we were going to do today. He says, uh, you know, if you are reluctant to speak out because you think you may be hopelessly stupid, be sure and don't speak rather than remove anybody's doubt that you are stupid. You know, and so this is the thinking behind self-deprecation. Now, once I have decided, not consciously but unconsciously, I've decided not to participate in your group, I might say to myself, well, so what? They're a bunch of assholes anyhow, which is arrogance, you see. So
What if
I'm,
they are assholes?
yeah, so I'm using the arrogance to cap off the self-deprecation.
Hank, I figured out that almost everything everybody knows is wrong.
Good. That's good. And is that why you don't participate?
Yeah, no, because you won't give me a chance.
Okay. There's the arrogance.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, and I also figured this out. Most people are only intelligent enough to argue to defend their ignorance, their stupidity, their crimes, their incompetence, and the right to be that way.
okay.
That's my philosophy.
Very good. Does it work for you?
Sure, all the time.
Okay. So the Dr. Phil question. How's that been working for you? Well, well, if a good way to shake oneself loose from some of these uh, um, perspectives, which are really solutions to problems, is to find a room somewhere and advertise and have a group come and teach the group. Teach them anything. Teach them about communication. Teach them about withholds. Just take one little thing that you know and teach them. And this is going to bump you up into a situation where you have to start creating a modified philosophy. If you don't do that, you can have a very Scrooge-like reclusive philosophy, and you could say that it works for you. But you start teaching people, and just confront the fact, just accept the fact that you may not be such a good teacher when you start out, but just do it. Because after all, you have information other people don't have. You have very special information that other people don't have, and it's taking you a long time to achieve it. Just take it out there and share it with people. What do you think about that, Perry?
I'm pretty smart. You know, took me all this time to get it all. It's nice to put it out and give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
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 Don't keep your light under a shade.
Yeah. 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 There is this thing about service. That service is a good thing. I think Norma talked about that. But teaching is the next step to learning. It's the next step up.
You really learn when you teach.
Absolutely.
It's exponential.
It is exponential, and your students teach you what you thought you knew but you didn't.
Yeah, they sure do.
Yeah, it's a great. Are we ready for me to start giving assignments?
Well, I'd like to hear something from Perry. I don't personally know you, Perry, and I just thought,
Yeah, I never
Yeah.
met you before. Never.
I hang out in Los Angeles.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Are you one of the?
All the time. I've been auditing since 1950.
Uh-huh.
I've been around and did this and did that.
You've been auditing since 1950?
Yeah.
So did you know Bob Ross and
I knew
huh?
Bob. Yeah.
Oh, but like he's my hero.
He's a great guy. Very smart.
I
Do you
want to
still-
talk to you about that.
Yeah. Do you still have a practice, Perry?
Oh yeah, I do it all the time.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Where are you in Los Angeles?
Near Beverly and La Brea.
You're not terribly far from Tom Franklin, are you?
I'm not sure. He lives up in Hollywood area, doesn't he?
In the Wilshire area.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been in Wilshire.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it seems like a good time to end off here. And does anybody else have something to add to the subject?
I want to make sure I connect with Perry. I mean, I knew only Bob Ross over the phone. He audited me some phenomenal stuff. But I would have loved to meet him, but this was 1997.
Well, Perry, do you want to share your email address or phone number with?
Sure. My email address is ROIK at SBC.
SDC
SB like Baker.
B.
C like in Charlie.
Yeah.
FBCglobal.net.
Where's the @ sign?
At global.net.
ROIK at
At
SBC.
It's ROIK at SBCglobal.net.
Yeah.
And your phone number, Perry?
It's 323
323
365
365 what?
365. I'll give it to you again. 363 365 0909.
Oh, 363 365
0909.
0909. So 363 365 0909.
You got it.
God, great. Awesome.
I'll edit that out of the recording because
Yeah.
don't need to broadcast it all over the world.
No.
Could we share the time that Bob Ross came to visit us in San Rafael?
Oh, please do.
He was he was in a difficult state because he had his teeth removed because he thought that they were what was it, Hank, that he was conquering something that
Precancerous? I don't remember.
yeah, he had some kind of disease, but he was an absolutely beautiful human being.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the what we talked on the phone, it was amazing. He wrote me personal letters. I just came across one a month ago.
Yeah.
Letter he wrote me.
And we took a walk, he and I, down to on this little island that we lived across of. And he's got this bushy white mane of hair, long hair. And, you know, I just looked at him with the sun behind him and he had at his profile. And it was like a figure from the Bible.
Wow.
He just had
What
this-
year was that?
Well, I think it was we moved into the house 1996, I think. So I think it was early in there,
Early '96.
or 97, 98, somewhere around there.
90s. He audited me first time about the end of August. Yeah, end of August, beginning of September, I think, somewhere around there.
I had one memory of him particularly. I mean, I did sessions on him, and we had went quite a ways. He used to contribute to the Free Spirit Journal, and I would edit his stuff and kind of go back and forth. But there was one thing that really stuck with me. At Tia Greenberg's in Altadena, I organized a party of practitioners, active practitioners. I can't remember offhand everybody who was there. What's this guy? The guy that lives in Las Vegas. I've forgotten. But
Jim?
yeah, Jim. And
Yeah.
what I did was there was one occasion there at this party where we were all gathered in the living room, and I had each person talk about what they were doing relative to what everyone else was doing. In other words, to just say, what is it that you do when you give sessions? And everybody there, person's name was Carol. Every person there talked about themselves, and talked about themselves in such a way that what they were doing was the only valid technique. And it was a big eye-opener for me. It was very interesting, because here I'm the editor of the Free Spirit Journal, and I'm supporting each of these people. And I do articles about them, and I do interviews, and when they have some kind of a methodology, I try to do a write-up on it. And each one of them is talking about how they have the only workable technique, until we got to Bob. And Bob talked mostly about this woman that he was working with named Carol, and expressed all of this appreciation for her and what she had been doing with him. And that made a big impression on me, that he was the only one that did this. So,
And Carol was
a, I've forgotten her name. I used to know it. I used to know all of these names. She was a practitioner. She was an associate of Tia Greenberg's.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you remember, Perry, what her name was?
No, I don't. There's a lot of people there to tell me.
Kind of Zoptic lady with dark hair and piercing eyes.
Was it Carolyn Brown? I remember that well.
No.
No. No, I don't.
Yeah, I forget. Well, anyhow, the point was that
Do you recognize that?
I can't.
Part one,
Let me try and steady
of
it.
the belief procedure or something. The belief procedure for conditions resulting from beliefs. Is that Bob Ross?
Yeah. To me, there's no better process in the world.
Yeah.
You know what this is, Hank?
Was that published in the Free Spirit?
Can you recognize all these?
Oh
yeah. Well, some of that's Enid's. The Scars on the Soul is Enid Vian. I don't know. I don't recognize the publication. Is it the Free Spirit Journal?
No, it's the New York Times.
No, it's everything you collected from the Free Spirit.
Yeah, I told you that
Yeah,
dozen
he told
times.
us that. Yeah.
Told you that
Very,
many
very
times.
clever.
This,
Yeah.
this is that's my collection. There's another one. This has all the. This is half of it. There's another half.
Fascinating. Well, thanks for.
Now, how do we recreate people sending in articles and opinions as we did for the, they came in because we were publishing a magazine. How do we recreate that as an online experience?
Yeah.
So it hasn't worked as well, or maybe the momentum has been lost. Who knows?
Yeah. Any ideas? Crickets. well, we'll just keep working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to end off here, and thank you for showing up, Perry. I wish we'd had your more of your insights, and thank you for coming, Tom, and thank you, David.
Right?
And Norma, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
When is the next meeting?
Usually 2 weeks. Usually 2 weeks.
I'll check it out. I'll put it on my calendar.
Yeah, you should. You're members of the portal group. You'll get an invitation.
So it would be November 3rd.
Okay.
Okay.
This is a fascinating book. So Transform Your Dragons.
Oh yeah, by Jose Stevens.
Does that guy have a Scientology background?
No.
How refreshing.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a
Channel.
he's a psychologist, but he was also a channel in the Michael group.
Oh.
And he has several books that I like very much. They're very, very articulate, very concise. And he did a reading on me and a friend, and I was impressed with it. I don't have access to it anymore. But his teaching, his ways of teaching are good, and it's been inspiring for me. When I first saw this book, I felt a little chagrined because I thought I should have written, but he was really qualified to do it. Okay.
I just thought of something about overrun, and I want to say something. I began when I mentioned that this is the most significant thing that I learned in all these talks. I see this in everyday life. If you start working too hard in one direction, you get to a point where you'll win, then you start losing. It's an overrun.
Absolutely true.
It doesn't matter what you're doing.
Absolutely true. Another form of overrun is people, when they first start on this path, they have a goal to achieve immortality. Whatever path, this, Buddhism, meditation, Sufism, at a certain point, especially from doing our work, you start to suspect that maybe you are immortal. You can't do anything but live forever. And as you go further and further, you become more and more certain of this. It's not black and white. You might achieve a lot from a near-death experience, or you may achieve a lot from working with other people, from teaching them. But to the extent that you understand that you are immortal, you know, your survival does not have that much to do with the big monkey here that we're operating in. At that point, if you keep working toward immortality, it's an overrun. And you start to go backward. And you start to get sick and you start to have accidents.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So,
Very well said.
yeah. Okay, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
All
All
right.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.